It's Monday, April 23rd. I'm Scott.
I'm Rim.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, we attempt to teach you quite hastily about Linux package management. Let's do this.
Well, in the course of the last several hours, we have generated a great number of noteworthy events in our lives.
Yes, not only that, but over the weekend we generated quite a few noteworthy bits, but we can't even talk about them because, well, the things that just happened are far more exciting.
Yep, I mean, we could have talked about the Mets game or Gaming for Hope, but no. Or we could even talk about the fire that happened near our house.
Yep, a fire happened near our house.
But then a fire almost happened inside our house just now.
Well, not quite the same variety of fire.
Well, you see, way back at RIT, this computer that I'm using now for the show.
The terrible computer that is, listen to any old episode and you'll hear about it.
Yeah, we've had issues with this computer just because I built this computer before I went to college. I built it.
Well, you replaced the most important bits since then.
Yeah, I replaced the motherboard with almost the same motherboard.
In like 2001.
Yeah, and you know what? The processor I got was 200 megahertz faster and otherwise mostly identical.
Yes, the computer is, regardless, old and terrible.
Now,
no matter how you look at it.
Back at RIT, it has started to have some problems with cooling because it's a gigantic case, and I no longer need a gigantic case because gigantic cases are no longer necessary.
No one gets the gigantic cases anymore. No one. I mean, unless you're making even the giant servers, everyone uses rack mount. No one uses full tower cases anymore.
Well, it used to be you'd have like 7 external drives if you were a geek, but now I have 1. Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the DVD, CD burner.
Well, because way back, you used to need to have like 4 or 5 1/4 floppy drives. So you could load all those.
Well, you'd always
at once.
have like your CD-ROM or your DVD-ROM, and then you'd have your burner, which was separate, and you'd always use both of them, especially when you had games that needed 2 CDs. A lot of people had the zip drive, you had the live drive, you had all
2
those
floppy
hard
drives. And then
you had that annoying hard drive cooler kit that just made a bunch of noise.
Yeah, I don't know why I forgot that. Oh, that's right, because back in the day, people used to tell you that if you had a 7,200 RPM drive, you needed to cool it or it would crash. And, well, I don't know if that's true because I have a lot of 7,200 RPM drives, and a lot of people have them, and they aren't cooling them. They don't seem to be crashing. However, that drive that was in that cooler, it's not in that cooler anymore, but it's working pretty well still. That 20-gig old drive is going.
So, in Colony, where we used to live at RIT, every year, we didn't have air conditioning, so once it became summer and it started getting warm, there would be a periodic event where Scott and I would be playing Counter-Strike, or Tribes 2, or whatever we were playing at the time.
Mostly Counter-Strike in those days.
And in the middle of the game, suddenly, you would start hearing, beep-boo, 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 beep-boo. That was the sound of my motherboard warning me through the PC speaker that my processor or something on my computer was dangerously hot and was overheating, and my computer was now reaching a critical and dangerous state.
Yeah,
now,
well, that CPU in there is an Athlon Thunderbird.
Yes,
which they might as well call it the Athlon Firebird.
Back then, it was an 800 megahertz Athlon, which wasn't much better.
No.
But the worst part was it would happen, and I'd be in the middle of a game of Counter-Strike, and I'm not going to quit because I'm doing great. I'm up in his base killing his dudes.
I actually blame the pre-XP Athlons for the fad of cooling CPUs ludicrously because those actually needed it. Not until the XP could you get away with normal cooling on an Athlon.
But imagine the scenario. I'm playing a game. I'm doing well. The alarm is going off. Scott is laughing because the alarm is going off. I am playing the game. I don't want to stop playing the game, but every second I continue to play, there's the chance that my computer will either burn itself out, catch fire, or break.
Yep, because remember,
Permanently.
we talked about how Athlons will just set on fire while Intel's, they might overheat, but they won't break from overheating.
Now, luckily, after one summer, the next summer it happened again, even earlier, because the computer was in further disrepair. Remember the whole time that this computer I still use to do Geeknights. But anyway, so I solved the problem. And very simply, all I did was go into the BIOS and set the danger threshold 7 degrees centigrade higher, and the alarm stopped going off.
Yeah, it's real smart. I know. Let's turn off all the safety mechanisms. That way, if something bad happens, we just won't know about it.
What could possibly go wrong?
Out of sight, out of mind. Chernobyl.
Possibly. That was perhaps the first thing that's ever gone wrong.
Yeah.
Well, That actually worked pretty well. The computer's fairly robust, and it didn't destroy itself, though there were a few close calls.
It's
every now and
working
then.
right now, but I'm not betting on how long that's going to remain true.
Well, I cleaned the computer a year and a half ago. And also, the video card had died due to overheating. Huh. So I replaced the video card, sadly, with a GeForce 4, which is like 1,000 times faster than that video card was.
Yeah.
The thing is,
the GeForce 4 for like $30.
Yep.
Yeah.
That thing's made the rounds of the computers in our house. It's like the backup video card.
Yeah, it's like, oh crap, we need video cards to put in computers, but we don't actually care how, if the computers can do 3D or not. I know. Let's get GeForce 4s. They're $30. They work with the NVIDIA driver
Well, we
and
had
Linux.
that ATI card that was dick and worthless.
Oh, that thing was such ass. That's why we bought the GeForce 4.
Yeah, because after spending 3 days trying to make that stupid ATI work in Linux.
Well, it worked. We couldn't get the TV out to work.
We also couldn't get acceleration to work.
Yeah, we didn't try to get acceleration.
Well, because
to
that
work.
FGLRX.
Meanwhile, we put that NVIDIA card in without doing anything. It just worked. Just ding.
Yeah.
Immediately, there was output on the TV screen that was correct. So, yeah, ATI, you suck.
But yeah, the computer is working pretty well, and once I replaced the burnt-out video card, it didn't overheat nearly so much anymore. Because the video card was actually the significant factor, which, as I discovered, the fan on the video card, once I took it out, had probably not spun in at least 3 years.
Whoa.
It was you couldn't even spin it with your finger.
You should have just used the TNT2, which only
I did.
can get away with passive cooling.
I did for a little while, and then I put this thing in. I forget why.
I don't know why. Maybe the TNT2, you complained it didn't work with the NVIDIA driver so well?
Might have been. I don't even remember.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
So now, the first hot day, it was actually surprisingly like 80 degrees
It was
today.
super warm today. I wore shorts and a t-shirt to work. It was great. Everything's awesome. I'm like super happy. The cold is finally over. Knock on wood.
Yep. Hot damn. I mean, even I didn't get to take the train home, even though I'm going to start taking the train to work. So I had to drive home. But I drove past the mountain. So I stopped and I climbed the mountain. And then I learned something. This mountain, this hill, for the one person who likes to argue, but whatever, it's all rock without many trees.
The rocks heated up.
The rocks heated up.
And they were hot?
And on the top of the mountain, where there wasn't any wind, because there's another ridge kind of blocking the wind.
You're like burning your feet on the rocks.
It was like 100 degrees, and it was like an oven cooking me. It was awesome and a little bit horrible.
Yeah, well, I have this actually Logitech I think it's 550. It's like a little mouse that comes with a really fancy numpad, right? And I bought one a long time ago to go with my laptop. But I lost the mouse, and I also lost the wireless transceiver bit. And I paid like $60 for it way back in the day. Now it's only $30. So when I lost the mouse, I just said, whatever, and I bought a new one. So now I have 2 numpads. So I just leave one numpad at home, one at work, and I carry the mouse back and forth. And the numpad is actually really cool in that it's also a calculator. It's also, a multimedia controller with play, pause, mute, volume, whatever. But it's also has a thermometer in it and a clock. The thermometer at work was like 82. I was like, God damn.
So I finally get home today, and my computer had been off all weekend because despite the fact that the cooling doesn't work, it's really, really loud. So I had it off all weekend, which is always dangerous. Whenever I turn this thing off, there's like a 40% chance it doesn't come back up when I turn it back on.
Yeah, it's like you have a junky old car. If it's running, it'll keep running. It won't, unless it's weirdly junky, it'll stall maybe, but it's not going to just break down while it's going.
Hell, a lot of old
likely.
junky cars, when you turn them off, they keep going for a while.
Yeah. So, but if it's off, good luck getting it started again.
Yep, and computers are the same. That's why if you have an old server, a little hint if anyone ever gets in the IT industry, you have an old server that's important and hasn't been touched in a long time, don't even fucking think about turning that thing off until you have a backup up and running.
Yeah.
Good God, has that bitten me in the ass enough for me to learn my lesson. Then I come home, and I turn the computer on, and I'm using it, and everything's fine. And I watch some dig videos, and the dig videos start skipping a little bit, and skipping a little bit more. And then...
As soon as that went off, that was so priceless. I was like, oh shit, what are we going to do the show? We got to go get the Mac from downstairs.
Yep, or we could use Jameson, who has probably the worst sound card ever made.
Yeah, it's a pretty bad sound card on that computer right
So
there.
the first thing Scott
I blame
says
it mostly on the $20 motherboard.
The first thing Scott says is, why don't you just turn off the PC speaker? Which I did, and then the computer crashed about 45 seconds later.
Awesome.
And I stick my hand under there, and of all things, it was the GeForce 4 overheating.
Yeah, maybe that's just where the heat pooled up because of the air channels in the case.
I think so, because it burned me. It hurt. I have a little red mark on my finger.
I've burned myself on quite a few CPUs, but more often I've hurt myself on
Of
spinning
course,
fans.
I also noticed that the CPU is a solid mass of dust.
Yeah, it probably has something to do with it
So
as
right
well.
now, I don't think we'll be able to hear it after the post-production in the show, but I currently have the fan that is normally in my window, which I use when it's warm enough for a fan, but not so warm or humid that I need the AC on. So I like to keep my
I
windows
didn't even
open.
put the AC in the window yet.
No, me either, but I'm gonna, because when the humidity comes, there's gonna be rain at some point.
Yeah.
God, I gotta get a new computer before the humidity. God damn.
Yeah, you do.
So now, that fan is sitting next to my case, which I open both sides up, and I now have an air channel going through it.
That's good.
However, unlike a certain unnamed friend of mine, and another little hint for all you kids out there, if your computer's overheating, it is not that bad of an idea to get a box fan or something and stick it next to your case and open up both sides and just get air blasting through. It's a good temporary fix.
It is a good temporary fix, but do not make it your permanent fix.
More importantly, do not make it so that it is touching your case or is close to your case. Because one thing that plastic spinning fans are good at generating is static electricity.
Yeah, that could ruin it pretty quickly right there.
Really quick, good God. I'm not going to name names, but someone got fucked by that.
Yeah. You want to keep the box fan, because the box fan blows so much volume of air that it doesn't need to be right up against the computer. You could put it like a foot back, 2 feet back. It won't be close enough to shock anything, and it'll still blow more air than all the fans in your computer could ever hope to blow.
Now, luckily, you might have remembered way back, I'm segueing here into the news, that I kept saying, April 22nd is the day. April 22nd, according to various leaked sources.
According to the calendar, April 22nd was yesterday.
Exactly, which we didn't do a show yesterday.
Oh.
But they kept saying, Intel's going to have price drops. Intel's going to have price drops. And I kept saying it, and I was excited, and I said, if it happens, I'm going to buy a computer. Well, sure enough, yesterday, Intel announced gigantic price cuts across the Core 2 and quad-core lines, and they introduced a bunch of new chips. And sure enough, immediately on Newegg, the E6600, which I'm convinced is the absolute sweet spot with one possible exception that Scott pointed out in terms of price for power.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, hot damn, gonna buy my computer. Within an hour, it sold out on Newegg.
It looks to be in stock right now.
Yep,
but
I just checked and I got the auto-notify email saying it's back in stock.
Well, who knows how long that's going to remain true.
Yep, so in the next 3 days, I say 3 days because I still have to pick a motherboard, which is not as easy as I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have to pick all this other stuff, but I'm getting a new computer, so the timing was perfect. And I think I'm going with the Core 2 because even though the XPs are still cheaper and they still perform almost as well, I really feel better going with Intel this time.
Yeah, I think AMD, they just need to do something. I don't know.
Well, the thing is, the AMD chips, for similar performance, draw more than twice as much power, require a lot more cooling, and just feel like they're not going to scale very well in the future.
Well, I think what it is, the AMD does still seem to win on the price-performance ratio, but the Intel is just so fast and so it doesn't feel like there's anything wrong with it at all.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
it feels like it's worth the price you're paying for all the other stuff that goes along with it.
It's not like the late Pentium 3, early Pentium 4 days where a Pentium chip cost 4 times as much and wasn't even as fast.
Or like the late Pentium 4 days where a Pentium 4 cost 4 times as much and wasn't that much faster at all.
Yep. And the other while AMD-based motherboards are still a lot cheaper, they're not that much cheaper. And actually, the Intel motherboards are starting to look a lot more impressive to me.
Yeah, I think it's,
I might not even get an Enforce.
I know, that's the thing, is like, I always, for the past how many years, I felt like Enforce is the chipset to get. And in many cases, Enforce is still the chipset to get. When you start looking at the motherboards, the Enforce chipset really rocks with the AMD processors, but it's kind of normal with the Intel processors. It's also overpriced with the Intel processors.
Yep, the newest series of Enforces, the motherboards that support it fully are in the $200, $300 range. And I've never paid that much for a motherboard, and I never will.
Yep, and the thing is, I realized, hey, in my life, I've owned 2 motherboard chipsets in primary desktops, and that was an Intel, which was the best one ever, and an Enforce 2, which was really great, but not quite as good as the Intel. So I kind of don't have a problem getting an Intel chipset now. I'm like, hey, yeah, I'll get an Intel chipset. My previous one was the best ever. Sure.
Yeah, and Linux now is pretty much just supporting 99% of what's out there. I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, you only really have to worry about your sound cards and your wireless cards and that sort of stuff.
Yep, but you can always buy a sound blaster.
Yes, you can. But yeah, the quad core is now, what, $560 on Newegg, which
Yeah.
is less than some of the Core 2 Extremes, which freaks me the hell out. Like,
Now, also, I point out that if you really want to build a relatively fast computer, oh my God, that's what John C. Dvorak looks like.
yeah, you never saw him before?
No, I've never seen him before.
That's what he looks like.
That's not what I expected.
Oh, okay.
All right, anyway, I just got distracted. Adblock isn't on this computer right here, right now. So I saw a picture of John C. Dvorak.
Yeah.
Right. So you can get computers with chips. The chips are faster than the computer that I'm using right now to record Geek Nights and to process Geek Nights for $30 to $40.
Yep.
$30 to $40.
Well, Rim, that's been true for like 4 years, but yeah.
Well, right now, or even you can get faster ones. It says here the 3.2 gigahertz Pentium D is $84.
Yeah, I wouldn't get that though. Right now, it's pretty much if you're buying a computer and you're not trying to get like one of those $300 machines that's like super cheap. If you're trying to get a reasonable desktop machine, there are pretty much two chips I'm looking at. The one that Rim was looking at, the 6600 Core 2 Duo, is the 3-time winner of the Customer Choice Award at Newegg, which is like, whoa.
Yep, it seems like most people who are buying PCs were either holding out for this chip or decided that this chip is the perfect plateau or point of most bang for your buck
Yep.
and most forward compatibility.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, right? The E6600 is a Core 2 Duo with the Conroe, and it's 2.4 gigahertz, and right now it costs $235, right? There's also the Core 2 Duo E6400, which is the next step down. That is exactly the same in every way, except it has 2 megabytes less L2 cache, so it's half as much L2 cache, and it's only 2.13 gigahertz, and it's $196. It's like $40 less, right?
Yep.
There's a new chip, right, that just came out, part of this whole thing that Intel did, the 6420. It's identical to the 6400 in every way, except it has the 4 megs of L2 cache that the 6600 has. So it's basically the same as the 6600, except it's like 0.3 gigahertz slower about and $40 cheaper.
Now, as we were just talking about between ourselves before the show, it used to not be that big a deal, but with the Core 2s, every gigahertz or every megahertz faster is a lot more than a megahertz faster was with older chips.
Yeah, well, see, here's the thing that's weird that can freak you out, right? Megahertz isn't an absolute indicator of how good the CPU is compared to other CPUs.
No.
For example, the CPU in my computer right now is an AMD Athlon 1.8 gigahertz XP, Athlon XP, right? My CPU at work is a Core 2 Duo. Each one of the cores is 1.8 gigahertz. Even using only one core and not using the other core, because I could do that, it's a zillion times faster than my 1.8 gigahertz Athlon XP. The chip is just so much more efficient that with the same clock speed, it can be like 5 times faster. It's ludicrous.
Now, the thing
Which
is,
means that adding 1 more megahertz to that chip is going to add a lot more performance than adding 1 more megahertz to my Athlon XP.
Yep.
So when you're adding 0.3 gigahertz, which is like, 300 megahertz, to that super awesome efficient chip, how much of a deal is that? Is it a $40 deal? That's a tough call.
Yep. The thing is, generally, like I watch, and it depends on, how much money is worth and everything, but I look at the list of chips in the series of chips I want to buy, and I look at how much it costs to upgrade from one chip to the next chip.
Mm-hmm.
And the progression is usually something like
$1,
like
$5.
$20, $20, $30, $40, and there's always a point where there's a big leap. Like the leap between the E6600 and the next Intel chip up
Is $100.
is $100, but the leap between that and the chip before it is only $40.
Yep, to go from the 6420 to the 6600, which is just 0.3 gigahertz for $40. To go from the 6600 to the 6700 is you're getting 0.3 gigahertz abouts again for $100. I'd say if you bought the 6700, you're an idiot.
Yep. At least as far as if I had a lot of money.
Oh, if you're just loaded out the ass with money, you're still an idiot to buy the 6700, because if you're Bill Gates, you can buy the Core 2 Extreme for $800. So there's no reason to buy the 6700.
Yep. But there's always that point, and the E6600 really feels like it's the hot point. However, don't you fuckers go out and buy them until I get mine. I might order the chip now just to get it and pick the rest of my computer tomorrow.
What if like the 6620 comes out tomorrow with 8 megs of L2 cache or something? I don't know.
See, I know it won't because that's the other thing.
Yeah, it's not
If you're
gonna-
thinking of buying a computer, you always want to buy right after the next big set of releases. Like as soon as they say, oh, price drops or
Well,
new
that's
chip.
why if it's been more than a month since something came out, people always say, wait for the something, wait for the
Yep,
something. And
because if I buy it now, it'll be the same price now that it'll be just before they announce the next
Yep.
thing. However, I'll have that chip with that speed for that much longer, so
Yep.
it's a better deal.
See, here's the problem: is you sort of get this paradox of people saying, wait, wait, wait. And then when something just comes out, people are like, no, it just came out. Don't get it. It just came out. You can't trust it yet. It's like, well, what do you want me to do? Never buy anything? By the time I can trust this, they'll tell me to wait for the next thing.
Yep. Now,
So you've got to wait for the second generation to just come out because you can trust the second generation, you know? I mean, the Core 2 Duo didn't just come out. It's old. It's been around for a while.
yeah, I mean,
But
our Mac
this
is
is-
a Core Solo.
Yep, this is just a better Core 2 Duo that just came out. So now it's safe because you can trust it, but it just came out, so it's time to buy. It's a buyer's market, people. All right, so if you're paying attention at all, DirectX 10 is the new hotness for PC gaming. DirectX 10 is basically the same as DirectX 9, but has a bunch of extra stuff, and it's only on Vista. So when new games start using all sorts of DirectX 10 stuff, and you want to have those games work as best they can with all the fancy graphics and the full speed and the whatnot, you need Vista. You need a DirectX 10 supporting video card, and need a DirectX 10 game. Some people are pissed because they might have DirectX 10 video cards. They have no problem buying video cards.
See, that's the
They
other thing
also
I'm
have no
debating.
problem buying DirectX 10 games. They don't care. They'll buy a DirectX 10 game. They want to buy a DirectX 10 game. They don't want to buy Vista because they don't like Vista. For whatever reason, they like their XP. There's nothing wrong with it. They're sticking with it.
Well, my reason is very simply, I don't want to buy a Dell computer because they really don't have exactly what I want for the price I want to pay.
Yep.
But if I pay for Vista on my own, it costs a lot. It's not worth it.
It's like $300.
But I have a legitimate XP license.
I have 2 legitimate XP licenses.
Well, I'm using one of your licenses.
Well, yeah, that might be the third one that I forgot. I'll have to see what key you're using with the program that tells you what key you got.
Yep, which I'm going to use very soon when I start planning my
We'll see
migration.
if that computer even boots the Windows.
It does.
It does?
I
All right.
booted it 2 days ago to play XCOM for like an hour.
All right, cool. But yeah. So, there's these guys. This is guy, Cody Brocious. I don't know if that's his real name, but that's the name on the blog.
That's a pretty good name if it's a real name.
Yeah, he's a 19-year-old. It says 19-year-old software reverse
Cody
engineer
Brocious.
living in San Diego, something, something. But he says he's working on Project Alki project. And he's basically says he's got a working one right here, a set of DirectX libraries that will let you do DirectX 10 in XP. And he basically runs the DirectX 10 demo programs on XP. Now, I haven't downloaded this and tried it. A lot of people are arguing like it's impossible. No, this works. I downloaded it works. I downloaded it didn't work. You know, it's really tough call on whether this is all bullshit, or whether it's all talk, whether it's the real deal. No one's quite sure. But if it is the real deal, that's going to be hurting Vista pretty bad because gamers are not shy about downloading some weird program and running it to make their games more
God,
awesome.
in the early NVIDIA days, how many people made just weird utilities that would set a bunch of stuff and make your video card lead optimal, even though half those things were Trojans?
Yep. Gamers are not ashamed or afraid to just download some utility that will help them run games in some way.
Part of that's because a lot of PC gamers aren't afraid to just wipe out their computer. They'll reinstall Windows once a year or every few months just because they know, I might have something slowing me down. Gotta have a clean Windows.
Yep. So people,
And if you think I'm kidding,
if this works, gamers everywhere are going to be using it, and people are going to start working on it, and Vista is not going to sell with the gamers, at least not the hardcore gamers, because they're going to be running their Direct 10s on XPs. If it doesn't work, it's all BS, and I predict that within 5 years, the gamers will go to Vista because they're gamers. That's what they do.
I think I'm probably going to stick with XP, get a DirectX 9 video card that isn't that expensive,
Yeah,
but good enough to play the games I want, and then eventually I'll probably jump to the DirectX 10 later whenever, I don't know, I somehow get Vista.
Yeah, I've got Vista for this laptop, but I'm not using it. I replaced it with the Ubuntu, and I probably wouldn't use Vista on a laptop, but if I was PC gaming a lot, a whole lot and I keep PC gaming a lot, it might eventually be worth it, but not right away.
Yep.
Plus,
You know
I'm
what?
probably going to replace my computer at the end of the summer, which will be a whole different scenario than buying
See,
one now.
if I was you, or if I were you, I would hold out until Penryn.
I'm holding out a long
Granted,
time.
I don't know if you can, because Penryn probably won't be available until next year.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how long I can hold out because my computer now could probably play the Team Fortress 2s and all those games that we're going to want to play at the end of the year, but it's not going to do it that well.
Yeah. Granted, you have a lot higher tolerance for low FPS.
Yeah,
than
I
an
could
FPS.
play with like 40 FPS.
I'll admit that I'm just a stupid nut, but
You are a stupid
it
nut.
really bothers me if I don't get at least 60 frames per second continuously and uninterruptedly. Like if I'm playing a
my
game,
monitors are 75 FPS, so that's all I really need.
see, that's the other thing, and I got to deal with this, though I'm sure I'll be able to deal with just fine because I'll have an awesome flat LCD, but I always ran my CRT. In fact, right now it's running at 100 megahertz, and I always played all my FPSs locked at 100 megahertz.
FPS.
Well, yeah, 100 FPS.
100 hertz, not 100 megahertz.
100
Good
hertz.
God.
100
Good
hertz.
God. 100 million FPS.
Yes, 100 hertz.
What are you playing there? Some NetHack at 100 million FPS?
I will
like-
say right now that I misspoke.
Yes, okay. It's time.
Things of the day. They're real quick here because we kind of went long in the first half, and again, I hate to use something on Dig, even though there's a lot of cool stuff on Dig. I assume that everyone sees everything on Dig, but in case you didn't, and also because there's nothing interesting on the internet that wasn't already on Dig in the last several days.
Man, half of what's on Dig right now is stuff I've seen before. It's like, come on, people. Where's the
Yep.
new business?
In fact, I just saw again on Dig, on the front page of the videos, that Christopher Walken Fatboy Slim video.
I saw that in high school, people. High
Yeah,
school.
It's
on
awesome.
TV.
It's awesome. We know.
It's awesome.
We've all seen it. Christopher Walken is one of the coolest human beings ever, but
He went to dance school. He can fucking dance.
anyway, what if the Nazis had mechs? What if the Americans also had mechs? And it was World War II, obviously.
Sounds like every board game and video game ever.
Well, this CG feels like it's a video game. Like, I kept almost expecting Control to turn to me at several points.
Yeah, especially when like you saw the guys in the airplanes show up.
Yep.
You like expected the camera to just float on into the cockpit, and then it would go bloop, and you'd have joysticks. It'd be good stuff. But that's not what
regardless,
happens.
this is really cool. And I gotta say, the CG people are not so much realistic in terms of how they look with their faces, but in terms of how they move, are spot on.
Yeah, that's one thing that really kind of gets me in this particular animation is that all the people moving, like they run naturally, they move naturally, they move their heads naturally. They don't look real because their faces still aren't quite, they're obviously CG rendering faces and everything. But the way the people run around looks just right. You could have fooled me from far away.
Granted,
Totally.
Emily speculated that they might have used a lot of motion capture for that. But
Which is awesome. Why not?
Yeah.
It works. You do it good. All right. Here's an old thing of the day, because Rim is right. There is nothing new on the internet lately. Lorem ipsum generator. It's at lipsum.com. Basically, when you want to, practice some typography, or like you want to set some type or format a page, but you don't have any text to actually format, or you don't want to be distracted by the text. Like if I do put an article about fire and I want to typeset it, I might be distracted by the article itself, and I won't be able to objectively typeset it in the best way possible.
And at the same time, you can't just use a stream of gibberish because that doesn't actually look like typing. And not only would it also be distracting, but it doesn't fit. It doesn't give you a sense of what the document will
Yeah,
actually
you need
look
lots
like.
of things that are like, you need tall letters, short letters, you need wide letters, narrow letters, you need, short words, long words, lots of spaces, you need a lot of mixed up kind of stuff. So the solution to this problem is Lorem Ipsum. If you go to this website, it'll tell you all about the history of Lorem Ipsum, and people, especially web developers and, printers and all sorts of people, get Lorem Ipsum that they use in order to, get things typeset just right when they don't have actual content. And I want everyone to actually read the paragraph on the bottom. It's really cool what the last paragraph on the page is. Oh, and this page will generate lorem ipsum for you if you need some, if you're making web pages.
Man, way back in the day, I had a little program on Windows that would generate however much lorem ipsum I needed and put it in the clipboard, and I could paste it into stuff I was working on.
Yep. Yeah, this is a pretty good lorem ipsum generator.
In fact, I wonder, I should make a lorem ipsum device that I can just cat out of.
Yeah, no, but this lorem ipsum generator is actually the best one.
Why shouldn't I do that? That's really... I should see if anyone else has done that, and I'll bet they have.
Because it will not put any random humor, and it won't put any other random, garbage in there doesn't work right. It's pretty much the best lorem ipsum generator there is. So, all right. Today we're going to talk to you about something very relevant, because a lot of people are switching to Feisty Fawn, or at least trying it out like I told them to.
Yep.
Oh, if you haven't tried it out, you should try it out.
I convinced some of the old curmudgeons at my job to try it out. They're really curious about this Ubuntu thing, because the last time most people in the tech industry used Linux was Red Hat 7.
When it was ass.
Yeah, Red Hat 7 sucked.
It really sucked.
It was so bad.
Okay.
And not Power Glove bad.
No. So, a lot of people are having a hard time understanding just how you install software in Linux.
Yep.
Because, well, in pretty much all Linux distributions, while each one does it differently, some of them do it the same as others, but not many, it's a totally different concept from installing software on Windows. In Windows, let's say you want to install, Skype. What do? You go to Skype.com, you download skypesetup.exe, you double-click on it, you're good. On a Mac, what do? You download some program, you double-click on it, you drag an icon somewhere into your applications folder, it's installed. You're all good. In Linux, that's not how it works.
Yep. In
It's
fact,
totally different.
back in RIT, when I was taking various classes on sysadministration and Linux and all that, one of the most common questions that other people asked in class, and they asked it with such frequency, was after they installed something, they got an RPM or whatever, and they installed it, they'd ask, so where did it install to? How do I run it?
Yep,
Where is it?
Yep, that's the thing, is because when you installed software on Windows and DOS and all those olden times, you would always install it to somewhere. I mean, in DOS days, installing software was just copying a folder from a disk onto your hard drive somewhere. And you would choose where it went, and it was your decision. And nowadays, everything goes into C: program files or whatever, but it's all about where it goes. In Linux, it's not about where it goes, because it's not one piece of software that's all in one folder.
Yeah, we're not going to get into it.
We're not going to get into it.
I don't know if we did a show on this, but if we didn't, we should.
We should. It's all little bits. Everything is a little bit, and all the little bits work together. So the little bits are all over the place where they belong, and your program is actually just one thing that then grabs a bunch of separate bits and then uses them all together to make the whole big thing go. So, when you want to install software in Linux, and the year is 1993, you only have one way to do it, pretty much. You get the source code, the actual source code, because remember, this is open source here. You have the source code available to you. It's not like in Windows with a closed source program where someone else takes the source code, compiles it, and gives you the result to run. You get the source code yourself, you compile it yourself, and then you run it yourself.
Yep. Now, of course, there were a number of problems with this. In one, a lot of people didn't really know how to compile things.
Yeah, well, anyone who was using Linux in those days knew how to compile things.
But even then,
most people still don't.
Say, all right, I'm going to compile foo. But what if foo needs all this other stuff that it doesn't come with? Well, I got to go get all that and compile it too.
You got to go out, you got to get all these different little bits, compile them each individually. The other part is, when you have a program, and the first thing you do when you have a new program is you go to the settings, and you check all the settings that you want, your preferences, because what you like. When you compile a program, there are preferences that you can set at compile time. Before you install the program, before it's running, you can decide things like, hey, do I want this program to support MP3? I should compile it with MP3 support. If I don't, it won't be able to support MP3. Stuff like that. And you had to give a whole bunch of configuration options when you compiled something, and it's not easy. If it was still this way, where everyone had to compile all their software by hand, it would be a nightmare. No one could do it. Only nerdy people who knew how to use compilers could use Linux.
So enter binaries.
Yes. Basically, people said, hey, this is too damn hard. let's compile the software and give the people the compiled stuff.
So what they do is you go to any website for someone who has an open source project, they'd give you the source code, and nicely, they would make various binaries of various versions that you could just download and install without having to compile them.
Yep, and they had a lot of different systems for how these binaries would work. Like some systems, someone would give you a special thing they made, and you would run it, and it would put the binary somewhere. Like Acrobat Reader still does it that way, if you want to install that on Linux, and Skype does it that way, I think. But they invented these systems of having binary software installation. And the two major systems that you have to care about are RPM and Deb. RPM is the Red Hat package management, and Deb is obviously what Debian uses. And since Ubuntu is based on Debian, it uses Debs also. Basically, the way it works is you download an RPM or a Deb, and you have a little program already installed that came with your distribution. If you're using an RPM distribution, it probably comes with the RPM program. If you're using Ubuntu or Debian, it comes with the Deb program. And you say, hey, install that RPM. Hey, install that Deb. And your computer tries. If it can, it can. If it can't, it can't.
Now, again, we could talk about how they work and what's actually in one of these things and how it knows where to put things. And it's actually a little bit more complex than you'd expect. But again, it's not something the average user needs to know or care about.
Yeah. Basically, what it does is, you download like the Deb for Firefox, and it says, oh, I need this and this and this, all other things. And it tries to get them. And yeah, that's how all the little bits come together, is because these programs know by looking at one package what other packages they need, and they can get all the dependencies and things. And it sometimes causes problems when distributions suck, but when distributions work right, it's awesome.
Now, back then, there was still the problem of, all right, I want to install foo. I go get the binary for foo. I run it. Uh-oh, it says, you need bar, baz, and bat in addition in order to install foo.
So you go and try to find the RPMs or the Debs for bar, baz, and bat, and maybe you can find them, maybe you can't.
And it usually involved going to semi-shady websites looking for RPMs.
And then you get like the wrong version. It's like 0.01, you need 0.02, and it doesn't work with that version. And then that, in turn, needs other things that are different versions, and the whole thing falls apart. It's terrible.
Enter package management.
Yes, what eventually happened is the distributions of Linux. People who take, because Linux is just a kernel. That's all it is. But people would take.
Oh, we should talk about the whole how technically there's the GNU.
No, we're not talking about that. But people who make a Linux distribution is basically it's someone who goes out and they get a whole bunch of bits, because you can choose different bits. It's like Legos. You can choose to use these Legos or those ones, the black or the gray or the red. Or
so
whatever.
I take like the Linux kernel, and then I grab, I don't know, this package manager and this and this that, and all these things.
It's like I take the Linux kernel, then I'll take Firefox, and I'll take the X terminal, and I'll take the barrel thing, and you take the pieces that are necessary and you put them together, and you make decisions about which pieces you're going to use and which ones you're not going to use.
If you build Linux from scratch, you just do that for yourself. You made your own distribution just for you.
Yep. You choose which pieces you want in which places, and in the end, you come up with enough pieces to make a whole system that has a GUI, or maybe your distribution doesn't even have a GUI. Who knows? You come up with enough pieces to make a computer that someone can use. And that's what a distribution is. The distributions, like Red Hat and Ubuntu and Debian and all those people, Gentoo, they decided, hey, this really sucks. No one can install software. Let's make repositories. What the repositories are is a server somewhere, or a bunch of servers, where they store all the Debs or all the RPMs or all the whatever. And your computer connects to the repository and knows what software is in there. So when you want to install, say, Firefox, you say, hey, Ubuntu, apt-get install Firefox. And Ubuntu goes to the repository that's managed by the Ubuntu people. It's all set up. Everything you need is in there, because they're constantly manipulating all the stuff that's in there to make sure all those puzzle pieces fit.
Yep, a lot of big distributions will have a team of people who work with them or for them.
A lot of people.
And all those people will do is pick applications or work together to decide which applications they care about. And whenever there are new versions, they'll go, get the source, make a binary that they know works on a standard version of their distribution, and put it in the repository, guaranteeing that it will work.
And they don't put it in the repository that you can get to until it's fully tested and they know it's going to work no matter what. At least most of the time.
Yeah, and granted, like you can get, like on Gen 2, even though it's source-based, it's still the same kind of thing where there are different like you can get the normal stuff that's tested, but you can change some bits, and then you get access to the repositories that have things that are mostly tested and should work, but might not.
Yeah. Basically, it's a big server full of software, and the software there, because it's managed by these people who are constantly, checking for new versions and patching security fixes and everything like that, it's like your one-stop shop. You need something new, they got it. You need an update for something you already got, it'll tell you because it checks the repository for when there's updates.
Yep.
To the stuff you've got now, and it's really cool.
You can also, usually there's various managers you can use with the repositories to actually search through them and find programs. Say I need, I don't know, a text editor. I can search through for text editors, find a list of 15 of them that are available through my distribution, download the ones I like, delete the ones I don't like.
Yeah, it's instead of hunting around the web, looking for stuff,
Possibly getting something shady.
The repositories offer a place to get something that's not shady, guaranteed, as long as you don't use some weird repository, as long as you only use the ones they tell you to. You're guaranteed to get something that'll work. And it's really easy to find software without roaming around wondering what's available and all that garbage.
Yeah, the whole Windows paradigm of download a program, install it to a directory is really completely obsolete unless you're still using Windows.
Yeah, and this is why Linux doesn't have spyware. I mean, it's not difficult to make spyware for Linux. I can make a spyware program, but no one's going to go to your website and download your exe file and run it just because you fooled them with a tricky website. People only get their software from one place. If they're using Ubuntu, they get it from the Ubuntu repositories.
I think it also helps that
And
security in Linux is just generally more robust.
that helps, yes, but...
And there's no Internet Explorer.
Yes, that's true. However, this is really like one of the big reasons that you don't get shady software on Linux, because no one will put shady software in their repository. And the thing is, if you want software, sometimes you want software that's not in your repository. Like you'll be using Red Hat, and you'll want, say, I don't know, the new version of Firefox.
And say the new version of Firefox only comes out in a deb for some reason.
Yeah, or maybe the new version of Firefox, the people who manage that repository, they didn't put the new version of Firefox in there yet. They're not going to put it in there for another month.
Or, like, here's something I ran into with Ubuntu. There was a program I used to set some Logitech mouse parameters, and it was old and barely maintained.
Yep.
It was not in any Ubuntu repository. In fact, all I have is one old busted RPM, and the website's gone and everything.
Yeah, well, you can choose to go out and try to find it yourself. You can go get the deb or the RPM on your own on the web and do it the old way.
Yep, I can try and find the source and compile it.
Yep, but those are difficult. What you can do is you can find a third-party repository. For a lot of things out there, there's someone who is making packages, and they make their own repository of stuff. Maybe there's a guy out there who has a special Ubuntu Firefox repository, and you can add his repository to your Ubuntu install. And now, when your Ubuntu is looking for Firefox, it'll get it there if he has the most up-to-date version. And that's how you can get other stuff, is not by going out onto the internet and finding some package of a newer version, because that'll only work once. You want to go out and find someone who's managing a repository, and you add their repository to your computer, and now you can get all the software that they're offering in addition to the software that you already had being offered to you.
Now, handy-dandy little Ubuntu tip. You want to go into your repository stuff and add universe and multiverse.
Yes, you see, in Ubuntu, by default, they only give you the standard Ubuntu repositories. There are other semi-official, mostly official Ubuntu repositories called Multiverse and Universe that offer you all the software you really want. If you add those, because they're run by Ubuntu, they're just not as official as the real ones. That's how you're going to get all the cool software. Once you've got those, you're basically never going to need to go and get software anywhere else. Almost never, like 99% of the time.
Yep, I mean, the only time I've had to is when I needed a specific version of something like Wesnoth for whatever reason.
Yeah. And Wesnoth's pretty easy to install. I mean,
yes.
Plus, if you can find a deb, 9 times out of 10, you just double-click on the deb and it will install and work. But, that only installs once. Like, I install BitTorrent from a deb. I go to BitTorrent.com to get the official BitTorrent client. I get the deb. I double-click. It works. It's not a big deal. One package I install the old-fashioned way is not going to kill me.
Yep. But for Ubuntu, generally just go to System Administration, and then there should be something that says Software Sources. That is where you can change this.
Yep, you can also get to there through the Synaptic Package Manager, which is your graphical user interface to interact with the repositories and the software installation methods.
Yes, in general, you should use Synaptic instead of add remove programs, which is also there.
Add remove programs is actually pretty good. I recommend that when you first install Ubuntu for the first time, go to add remove programs and go through the whole thing once. Then
True.
never use it again. Because that's pretty much, it shows you this, it gives you a different interface on the software installation. It's much better for newbies, but isn't really helpful in the long run.
Yeah, but it has most of the things that normal users will need right away.
Yep, so your first time through, you can go in there, and it's real easy to understand, and you'll be able to install all the software that you need to get going. But from then on out, just use the Synaptic Package Manager for when you need, real software beyond that. So yeah, I hope that was a good explanation. We had to hurry it because we're running out of time.
Yep. Also, I've been watching my computer to make sure it doesn't overheat, and I think the sound card's having some trouble, so we'll see how this sounds.
Oh, great. Fantastic.
Not bad trouble, but I think it's slowly...
We can use the Mac tomorrow, maybe?
I'm going to have a computer by next week, so I'm going to try to hold out.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Anyway, I hope you understand Linux package management. We barely went into detail on it, but if you have any questions, the forums are awesome.
Yeah, granted, half the time you ask a question and Scott just says Google it.
Well, that's true. Ask Google before you ask me, because 9 times out of 10, Google has the answer first.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Odeo. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.